created a jungle, a real jungle. He brought back palms, massive palms, the giant sort of things that you'd see perhaps in the Amazon or somewhere. And dragonflies were enormous things. I mean, they're probably about 8 inches long, some of these. And these stunning colours of blues and greens and crimsons and yellows and gold, just flashing across the water and hovering.
Did you actually see them?
Yeah, they were enormous things. And it was a real jungle, and that's where we used to play when we were kids, when we were down there. And as far as we were concerned, nobody else knew about it. We had discovered it. There's a different sort of sound. It's almost like a sort of buzzing sort of sensation. And you can feel the warmth coming from this jungle, but if you don't know it's there, you walk towards it and then you part some of these leaves and suddenly it's a different world is revealed. And it's really warm in there, it's very humid, a completely different sort of ecosystem. Cornwall is on the edge of jet stream. Climate there is much warmer than other parts of England. So you can actually grow palm trees and stuff down there. So because of the natural climate, and then you have this enclosed area, this jungle, with the insects and the dragonflies that he brought back, it was a real live jungle. It's just a magical place for kids, absolutely magical. A little bit scary, you know, if you fall in, is there a crocodile in there? There wasn't, but you know, you build up these fantasies, and then you play your games around there, you know, as children, chasing each other around and that sort of thing, playing hide and seek. It's fantastic. But it was a place of discoveries. There are always things to discover in walking through the woods, and I think it kind of tuned my head in a little bit to not be disturbed by traffic, human distractions, noises, the things that sort of take your attention away from the natural world. There, it was, the natural world was where it should be. And I kind of realised more and more that I was building a massive respect for the woods and the cycle of the seasons, good times to go looking for berries, how important the trees were for the earth and for giving homes to birds and insects and protection, protecting the land as well, holding the land together. So when you've got a stream running there and you've got a well to get clean water and you've got a cobbled yard and somewhere to keep warm and you look after the woods, you don't just cut down the tree because you want that wood. You look for the wood that the tree has given up naturally. It's broken off, it's fallen off, and you take that wood and you dry it out. So you're clearing up some of the debris from the winds or the storms, but the trees are carrying on. You know, if you get a broken branch on the tree, you cut it off, so it's not going to damage the tree anymore, and then you've got that wood to take back. So you don't waste things either, because everything is useful. If you've got an empty bag, you keep it, because it's going to be useful for carrying stuff from the village, or for going out and looking for strawberries or blackcurrants or whatever in the woods. If there's a stub of pencil, you don't chuck it away, you just use it until there's only a tiny bit of lead left. Because if you want something else, you've got to walk 1.5 miles to see if you can get one in the village. And it wasn't a big village, so you know, you didn't buy food you didn't need. You didn't eat more than you needed, because there was no point. And I think just it makes you very fit, very conscious, very understanding of not being wasteful. And I knew it was being an education as much as anything else, but I absolutely loved it. Whenever I would come out of Butler's cottage, and there was a stone wall, so there must have been a building up there at some point, no idea what it would have been, but there was a green gate in it, a tall gate, not like a garden gate, it's more like a door with a frame. And I'd never opened it up. One day when I was coming back from the village, there was a movement on my left, up in this high bank, and I looked round a bit of a shock, and there was a goat looking down at me, a goat, looking down just like that, bloody hell, and it just staring at me, and I said, "Good afternoon, don't do that again, please. It's too much of a shock. And these are the goats that used to look out of the window of the derelict house, just down by the copse, just down by the stream. But to the right of this goat, there was that green gate. I must go and explore that at some point. I'd never known what was on the other side of it. And soon after that, it was a nice day, an afternoon, I'd been to the village, come back with some cheese and stuff. And I got up onto this bank and I managed to inch the gate open a little bit. I don't know, last time it was open, I have no idea. I'd never seen it open before. Just a gate in the wall. And I managed to get it open enough, probably about sort of 12 inches or something like that, to slip through sideways. And it's very, it wasn't bramble on the other side, but lots of sort of ivy and stuff growing at ground level and up the inside of the wall. And I stepped through, and immediately it was so warm there because the sun would come round that way, and so it was hitting the wall, and the wall was just reflecting the heat, and the air was absolutely alive with flying things and buzzing insects and flying beetles and things dropping down from trees and birds hopping around, and the noise in the air, it was hums, but on lots of different tones, lots of different levels, you know, things with tiny little wings, and like that, whizzing past, and it's like the big wings, like bees and wasps and things. And it was, I just stood there and looked, and it's a completely different world from my side of the gate into their side of the gate. And I suddenly thought, this is an alien world. This is a completely different aspect of a human living in a human life in nature's world, and walking into nature's world itself, where I was the alien and they were the true inhabitants. And I just stood there and listened, and these things were buzzing. They didn't seem to care about me at all. They were just buzzing straight past my face and around me and above me and below me. And I suddenly thought, I must be really careful where I tread. I don't want to damage anyone. And there was a tree, an old tree there, sort of overgrown and straggly. And I moved towards it and cleared a bit of earth and sat down on a bit of the bough of the stump of the tree, with my back against the tree. And I just sat there and took all of this in. And it was, I couldn't think of it in this way at the time because it was so new and extraordinary to me. But I had entered this alien world where I was the interloper, I was the human in the wrong place. And looking at the television now, if you look at something like Star Wars, when Luke Skywalker goes into a bar or something, you've got all these weird creatures, and they know who they are, or Men in Black, something like that. They know who they are, they're from a certain kind of world, and the humans are just part of all this integrated alien species. But there, I was the odd one out. I was the great big giant who was in the wrong place. And I was just so conscious that this was their world, this is how it should be, this is what it would be like if there were no humans there. And it changed my whole perspective on sort of, not just animal kingdoms of Africa and India and various other places, you know, but have those natural animals which now are so trapped in small pockets of forest or desert or whatever, because the humans find it inconvenient for them to be in our way. So we clear the land, we chop down the trees, you know, we do all this stuff. And yet these creatures are so integral to the planet. And it's not the size that makes them important, it's the fact that they're there. And when I was sitting there, this ant had obviously found its way up my leg and was sitting on my knee. Excuse me, do you mind getting, and I stopped myself from saying, excuse me, can you get off my leg, please? It's not hurting me. I thought, no, actually, I'm the one who's in the wrong place. I'm probably sitting on the roof of your house, and you've come to see who this great big lumbering human is. So you're the one who's, excuse me, do you mind getting off my roof? And so I just did that, and it walked onto my finger, and I popped it back down and said, my apologies, I didn't mean to disturb you. And I think that was very early on when I started talking to insects.
Sorry.
It's true. And I don't think I've ever stopped since.
Wow.
I don't, honestly, you know, there's a lovely, there's a lovely moment in one of the Men in Black, I think probably the first Men in Black series. I just quite like that. It's so nicely done that all species are special. Some are grumpy, like the big old bull in the field.
Yeah.
And some of them just sort of trying to get on with their own lives. They don't really care about you. And there's a lovely part in one of those Men in Black where two guys are walking along the street. You just see the feet of people walking along the pavement in New York or wherever it is, and somebody's foot stops like that and they move it. And this little bug looks up and says, "Thank you for not treading on me," and just carries on its way. And because of that experience in Cornwall, that really hits home to me as well. Just that little comment that somebody writing that part of the movie had that awareness to think, you know, it's a bug's world as well. It's not just ours. And we do have the opportunity to be respectful if we have the time to think about it. We take the time and the care to acknowledge. We can't always help treading on an ant. We don't see it all the time. We don't always look. But I'm much more aware now that if I can avoid hurting other creatures, just for the sake of being aware, then I do my best to respect their place in the world. But that, edging through, forcing our way through into that part of the world, was just like a science fiction movie. And I just sat there for hours, listening to the different sounds of the different species of flying things. And they were all, none of them crash, none of them bump into each other. They've all got this kind of sensory thing where they can maneuver around each other. They're getting out of each other's way, or you might get two of them heading in the same direction or opposite directions, and they just move around each other very conveniently, much more conveniently than aircraft can avoid each other. You know, we've got to have so much technology to just get off the ground and get somewhere else. And these things are so, it was just stunning. It was absolutely stunning. And I think it's partly being in that part of the world, reading The Lord of the Rings, which is very respectful to other kind of forms of life, other forms of being, other forms of humans and slightly non-humans. And I think when you're young, 14 years old, and your mind is already keyed into the woods, keyed into life in Butler's Cottage, travel to get your food, and then you step through into another world, and you see these animals all just doing their best to survive and not be eaten or sat on or whatever. And that was an extraordinary moment, and it stayed with me. It's incredibly sharp in my mind still. The sounds, the smells, the air was kind of dusty. You know, sometimes with moths' wings, you can see the dust come off them if they hit a window or something. The air was kind of alive with all these spores of plants and insects, and tiny little green insects and little white ones all flying about, buzzing around all over the place, landing on your hand, having a think about it, and then going off again. And if I just sat there like that, they'd just use me like a piece of wood to land on, and then get up and go on, move on again. Butterflies, masses of butterflies, all over the place, and it's landing on your head. You know there's something up there, so you just kind of try not to hurt it. So it might wave your hand like that, just make sure it's not a wasp or something, and then it picks up and flies off again. And that was absolutely amazing. I never told anybody about that before. And it's not the sort of thing I would have gone back to school or really told my mates about, my small group of mates. Because they wouldn't have understood. Some of them would have understood it, but there was something about it that it wasn't embarrassment. Something about it that was very special for me to understand, to conceive, to build into my life. I didn't want to have to explain myself. There's something too precious about it, really. And there still is.